Quit looking at these politicians as people to look up to.
Yeah.
Just stop
They're not.
it. Just stop it. You're not a Democrat or a Republican. They're having a party, and you ain't invited.
Mommy, stop laughing. We're doing a Brodown.
So I stumbled on this video, and it's from the Black Conservative. If you're not familiar with him, I highly recommend you go down the rabbit hole, go and check him out. He's worth a subscribe. He tells it like it is. He tells the truth. And this particular video, I mean, it was basically labeled how Pence was trying to throw Trump under the bus. Nothing. He's running for president. He doesn't have a prayer of winning. He's milquetoast. He's bought and paid for. If you vote for Mike Pence, you're a dummy because he's just part of the establishment. And if you're trying to get away from the current establishment,
That is not the route to take.
you don't go putting people like that back into office. That's how we got in trouble to begin with. I saw this, I clicked on it. I said, hey, I'll take the bait and I'll watch it. But he begins talking about what's happening over in Israel, which is tragic.
Absolutely devastating.
And myself, as an avid Ron Paul fan, and have been for decades, I mean, I've always loved this guy and thought he would be the perfect candidate to run our country. But because he wasn't part of the establishment,
He got pushed to the side.
Republicans need to be ashamed when they look back and think, I had an opportunity to put Ron Paul up there to run our country, but instead I chose Mitt Romney and John McCain. They are part of the establishment, and it's very obvious to those of us on the outside.
Especially now. It's more so in the open now that they're part of the establishment rather than 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah, well, any fan of George Carlin,
Knows.
like I was growing up, as well as listening to Ron Paul speak and just the sheer amount of logic and reasoning and facts that he would produce, it made it impossible not to at least admit that, yeah, he has a point. The war machine has to move forward. That's why Democrats and Republicans are so heavily invested in war. And it's why during the 4 years that Donald Trump was president, there were no wars, because he's not part of the establishment.
Well, something that I've never understood is that people here doesn't want war, right? Like, that's our thing. We don't like having to fight people. Like, we don't want to send our sons and daughters overseas just to die. We don't want that. So why are we voting people in who do?
Because people are, for the most part, stupid.
Well, I mean,
let's just be honest here. If you were to start a new, cultivate a new society, and you took 100 people and took them out into the woods and said, okay, here's a machete, and here's a few tools you might need in order to dig and start making gardens, things of that nature.
Have at it.
You're going to have a couple of alpha males step up, and they're going to take command, and they're going to say, look, here's what we need to do, here's the smart play. Then you'll have some other ones step up that'll have common sense and go, okay, the easiest approach to do this, the best way to do this, and so on and so forth. But by the time you get 10 people deep, the remaining 90 are literally useless. About 2 days into this experiment, you're going to find out quickly that most people are lazy and they don't want to think for themselves. And that is what votes for our country. So I've never bought into this nonsense of everyone needs to vote. I disagree greatly with that. You need to vote if you understand what's riding on the future. You don't understand the bills that are being passed, or if you don't understand the politicians that you're voting for and where their loyalty lies, then you shouldn't vote for them. Just because they're a blue or a red is ridiculous to say that. Again, you would have had John McCain and Mitt Romney Republican. Democrats, you'd have had Lieberman. The people or Hillary Clinton. I mean, the people you're putting up for us to vote on is ridiculous. And it's all a sham. Like currently, they're trying to push DeSantis up because they can control him as an establishment more than they can Trump. Trump's going to win the nomination, and the Republicans really can't do anything about it because the people will speak, and they do still work for the people.
Yep.
Whether they believe it or not, whether they like it or not, the Republican Party still has to abide by the vote rule of the people. Now, when it comes to Democrats, there's no such thing. There are no rules that they will not break, and they will do everything they can to get what they want, regardless how they have to cheat or steal or beg. And I mean, if you're a Democrat, I'm sorry, I'm breaking news to you that you're not aware of. I apologize. You should already know this stuff, but it's a fact. There's a reason why they push Bernie Sanders out. There's a reason why they push all their candidates out, because they already know who they want. It's irrelevant for you to even.
Yeah, but Republicans are the same way. They already know who they want. They're going to push who they want, and they're going to do the thing to.
They'll push who they want, but the people are still going to dictate who the Republicans put up there, whereas the Democrats, it's not going to matter. They're not even going to have a vote. Robert F. Kennedy just announced that he's going to go as an independent. The reason he's going to do that is because he realizes the Democrat Party will never put him up there.
Smart man.
They won't let him go against.
Yeah, but we need more third parties.
Well, we need less Democrats too. I mean, we need these policies. They've crammed so much into the last 3 years of policies that they wanted to obtain, the whole Green New Deal, the stopping the fracking, the opening the border, the making the LGBTQIA plus 0 divided by 5. They've made all of this stuff just polarizing. It's what they wanted. And it's something that normally them progressively, slowly push their agendas on the country. And they do it through media, and they do it through movies and things of that nature. You know, when I was a kid, there weren't really any interracial couples. It wasn't a big deal, but you just didn't see a bunch of them. Then all of a sudden, every commercial is an interracial couple. It's slow progressions. It's slowly building up to what they want. Why they would care whether couples are interracial or not, I really don't know, but it's part of
the agenda.
Yeah, I mean, it's an obvious agenda. Go watch commercials. It's
you have to normalize stuff for them to push out their agenda.
Correct, which is why they're normalizing things that I vehemently disagree with, such as pedophilia, but they try and they try and they push and they push. And like I said, in the last 4 years, they have pushed this so hard that it makes you wonder with Epstein and his book never really being released. They've arrested one person on this when there are hundreds, if not thousands, of violators of children that are in these books and in this information, but it never came to light, because by the time those books do come to light, guaranteed they're going to have normalized this enough to where the penalties won't be as steep. Revision is history. We're only going by today. We're not going by what you did in the past. So we're not going to go back to the way things were when you did these acts. We're going to treat you as we would treat you today. When the black conservative showed his video of Ron Paul explaining how the United States is pretty much at fault for all the terrorism going on right now with the Middle Easterners. It's something that I already knew and assumed most people did, but when I would bring it up to people, they would look at me crazy because they didn't understand, you know, the Mujahideen, and they didn't understand, you know, where Hamas came from, or where Al-Qaeda came from, or all of these terrorist organizations and where they began. And when he got into this, I stopped the video because I do want to react to the rest of it. But I know, I'm pretty certain I know about everything that he's gonna talk about in this video. And I think the world needs to see that. And if our channel can bring to light some of what he's saying, I hope you listen, because we do have a very important election coming up soon. And as to the integrity of these elections, I refuse to give my say because I do enjoy posting videos for you guys. But let's just say that the integrity of our elections has gotten worse over time. And the fact that you can still mail in ballots when you're perfectly capable of walking down and casting a vote, to me, is insanity. The fact that you want these 18, and as the Democrats were pushing the bill, 16-year-olds to vote, and illegal people to vote. These are the things that their policies have tried to push, and we're going to have people voting in our election that aren't even citizens of our country, and that is by design. And with these mail-in ballots, it is absolutely impossible to keep track of all of it properly in one night, one day and one night when they do the count. It's just too easy to manipulate. Go to the nursing homes and do the ballots there, have it witnessed, have it watched, have it recorded.
Military, have it on base, even if it's overseas. You can send one of those ballot boxes to the base and they can do it there.
Yeah, I mean, there's no reason that Germany can't get one of these crappy Dominion voting booths there to be watched and all those votes be contained and sent back to the United States. They don't need to mail that in because it opens Pandora's box. And it's always going to have election deniers. Let's be honest, calling Trump election denier, calling all the people with January 6th, all people today, calling them election deniers is absolutely hypocritical after what we dealt with from the time Trump took office.
Much further back than all of that.
Yeah, I mean, it goes
like
back decades.
20 years.
But because they're trying to impress the youth of today and just continue to project and badger people that are older that, you know, hey, this is how it is. They're the ones that deny the election. I can still remember when, you know, Jeb Bush was going for Florida, and I can remember when George Bush was running for president. I mean, there was denial. That's every year. It's nothing new. And to try Trump on trumped up, no pun intended, charges for saying he's an election denier when your party has done this every single time you have lost. Election denial has been at the top of the forefront. It's just ridiculous. So I want to hear more about what's going on in Israel from the Black Conservative. Again, if you're not familiar with him, please go check out his channel. We'll put a link to the video down in the description. He is well worth listening to because he just provides facts. And if you want to come back to our video and make a comment and go, no, I caught him lying, please do. I'd love to hear what he said isn't accurate. We could do a whole video about so many of these topics, but I want to stay on this topic. We're going to check out what the Black Conservative has to say about what's happening in Israel, along with some footage of Ron Paul years ago talking about exactly what is occurring now. Let's do this.
Mr. President, we had peace through strength, and now we have weakness, conflict, and chaos. The atrocities we're witnessing in Israel would never have happened if I was president, would never have ever happened. When I was commander-in-chief, we reduced the Iranian economy, and I withdrew from the disastrous Iran nuclear deal, imposed the toughest ever sanctions on the regime, and imposed a strict travel ban to keep radical Islamic terrorists the hell out of our country. Now they're pouring into our country. They're pouring into our country. Joe Biden undid it. He undid it all and gave billions and billions of dollars to the world's top sponsor of terror. Tossing Israel to the bloodthirsty terrorists and jihadists.
All right, guys, so we got to talk about my least favorite subject ever to talk about, which is this conflict between Israel and the Palestinians. And the reason why we got to talk about it again is because Mike Pence came out here and gave the worst take that I've ever heard in my life when it comes to this situation, in which Mike Pence, for whatever reason, I'm not sure exactly who told him to go on national television and to say this, something that is so stupid and so dumb that, quite honestly, this should be the end of his career. His career was already over, but this really should be the nail in the coffin for his career, in which he blames Trump for the Hamas attack on Israel that basically led up to the escalation of this conflict. Take a look.
I want to focus on what you had to say about some of your fellow Republicans. You said that this is what happens when leaders in the Republican Party signal Americans retreat as leader of the free world. Weakness arouses evil. Are you talking about your former running mate?
Well, I am, but let me begin at where we ought to start. I mean, that disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan has emboldened the enemies of freedom around the world. And now war is raging in Eastern Europe. And President Joe Biden's kowtowing for the last 2.5 years to the mullahs in Iran, lifting sanctions, begging them to get back in the Iran nuclear deal, and then paying $6 billion in a ransom for hostages, I think set the conditions for this unprecedented terrorist attack by Hamas against Israel. But I also believe this is what happens when we have leading voices like Donald Trump, Vivek Ramaswamy, and Ron DeSantis signaling retreat from America's role as leader of the free world. That what happened in Ukraine was an unprovoked invasion by Russia. What happened this weekend was an unprovoked invasion by Hamas into Israel. And I really believe now more than ever, both the debate within the Republican Party and the debate within America is whether or not we're going to once again stand without apology as the leader of the free world, as the arsenal of democracy. The heartbreaking images coming out of both of these theaters of operations remind us that America is the indispensable leader of the free world. And if I'm president of the United States, we'll lead from American strength.
Yeah, so it's amazing to me how the neocon GOP politicians seem to be in a competition in regards to who can have the silliest, most asinine takes on this situation going on here in Israel. And Mike Pence here really takes the cake for the silliest take that I've heard from a GOP neocon politician on this situation by blaming Trump, okay? And him blaming Trump, in my opinion, is Trump derangement syndrome taken to a whole nother level, considering how, one, this guy was the vice president in Trump's administration, which is, again, it's incredibly hard to believe, right, in 2023, that this guy was actually the second person in charge. But also because Trump's foreign policy, objectively speaking, prevented situations like this. For example, when it came to giving money to the Palestinians and the money allegedly ending up in the hands of Hamas, Trump blocked that. Biden undid that.
Yeah. Trump
also blocked funding to Iran, okay, in which, you know, Biden undid that as well, too, in which allegedly, according to the GOP, Iran may be using some of those funds in order to fund, you know, this terrorism and stuff like that. Again, I think that objectively speaking, under Trump's foreign policy, we had more peace for a reason. And one of the reasons why is because Trump actually really did believe in peace through strength. He bucked the neocon establishment. He was tough when he needed to be tough.
Yep.
And he was diplomatic when he needed to be diplomatic. For example, I always use this example because I love what Trump did in regards to dealing with Iran and General Soleimani and showing that, hey, we're tough. Okay, if you mess with us, then, you know, there's going to be hell to pay. But also at the same time, you know, when it comes to North Korea, his ability to be diplomatic instead of being antagonistic against Kim Jong-un all the time, Trump actually was like, you know what, let's play ball with North Korea. Let's actually try to use some diplomacy here. And what you saw under Trump is that we didn't have as many issues with North Korea as we usually had with North Korea under previous administrations like the Obama administration and the Bush administration. We can't forget about the Abraham Accords that have normalized relations between Israel and some of these Arab states that historically have been antagonistic towards Israel, okay? Objectively speaking, Trump has brought Israel closer to peace than most presidents, okay, that we've had, okay? In which, you know, now, you know, Saudi Arabia was on a path to normalizing relations with Israel. However, it seems like under the Biden administration, that may fall apart, okay? Just saying. Trump's foreign policy, in my opinion, is probably one of the best things about his presidency, and that is why we need this man back in office more than ever before. Okay, so for Mike Pence to come out here and to say something like that, to blame Trump's foreign policy for why we're in this situation, again, is just mind-blowing. It's just mind-blowingly stupid, and it should be the end of his career, right? But with that being said, I actually want to take this a step further. And the reason why I want to take this a step further, guys, is because on my channel, I'm not afraid to go into territory that some conservatives are afraid to go into. Because we really need to go here, because if neocons are going to come out here and blame MAGA, they're going to blame Trump, they're going to blame non-interventionist foreign policy, which is what, you know, the MAGA base believes in. Okay, they're tired of the endless wars. If they're going to blame us for situations like this happening, let's actually tell the truth. And the truth is that the reality is that a lot of these situations happen in regards to radicalizing terrorists and arming them because of interventionist neocon / neoliberal foreign policy.
What's happening in the Middle East, and in particular with Gaza right now, we have some moral responsibility for both sides in a way, because we provide help and funding for both Arab nations and Israel. And so we definitely have a moral responsibility, and especially now today, the weapons being used to kill so many Palestinians are American weapons, and American funds essentially are being used for this. But there's a political liability, which I think is something that we fail to look at, because too often there's so much blowback from our intervention in areas that we shouldn't be involved in. You know, Hamas, if you look at the history, you'll find out that Hamas was encouraged and really started by Israel, because they wanted Hamas to counteract Yasser Arafat. And you say, well, yeah, that was better then and served its purpose, but we didn't want Hamas to do this. So then we as Americans say, well, we have such a good system, we're going to impose this on the world. We're going to invade Iraq and teach people how to be Democrats. We want free elections. So we encourage the Palestinians to have a free election. They do, and they elect Hamas. So we first, indirectly and directly through Israel, help establish Hamas. Then we have election. Then Hamas becomes dominant, so we have to kill them. You know, it just doesn't make sense. During the 80s, you know, we were allied with Osama bin Laden. And we were contending with the Soviets. It was at that time our CIA thought it was good if we radicalized the Muslim world. So we financed the madrasa schools to radicalize the Muslims in order to compete with the Soviets. There's too much blowback. There's a lot of reasons why we should oppose this resolution. It is not in the interest of the United States. It's not in the interest.
Yeah, so what you saw there is Ron Paul, who some people say is the OG. Okay, that was in 2009. Okay, when this conflict had escalated, him laying out why neocon/neoliberal foreign policy, the same foreign policy that people like Mike Pence and Nikki Haley worship at the altar at, has actually been a thorn in the side for the United States. And I'll go even further, because it is an objective fact that the neocon foreign policy that people like Mike Pence continuously push in this country has been an absolute failure. Okay, like, for example, Ron Paul talked about what happened in Afghanistan. Let me actually give you more details. Under the Reagan administration, we armed and funded the Mujahideen under the code name Operation Cyclone. Now, the Mujahideen were Islamic rebels who we funded them because we wanted to push back against the expansion of the Soviet Union and their influence around the world. One particular place where we were fighting back hard is Afghanistan. Okay, we wanted to fight a proxy war in Afghanistan in order to relinquish Soviet control and influence in the country. So again, what did we do to do that? We armed radical Islamic extremists, trained them, and then out of the Mujahideen, you had the Taliban. Now, eventually in the 1990s, the Taliban took over Afghanistan during the Afghan Civil War in the early 1990s after the Soviets had been driven out. In the late 80s, again, after the U.S. funded the Mujahideen, which again is a precursor to the Taliban. Okay, they were Islamic fighters, jihadi fighters that we funded to drive Russia out of Afghanistan. Again, that led to the Afghan Civil War, in which the Taliban emerged out of that civil war, again, as a successor to the Mujahideen. Okay, the Taliban now takes over Afghanistan in the mid-1990s. The Taliban, because they're radical Islamic extremists, turned around and then became antagonistic towards the United States. Okay, and they allowed terrorists to plot and plan terrorist attacks in their country, which allegedly led to 9/11. Now we have to go back into Afghanistan because we armed these people, we trained these people in the first place, or, you know, the precursors to the Taliban, to be more specific. And guess what? 20 years later, trillions of dollars later, thousands of American lives later, thousands of innocent civilian lives later, the Taliban now has control over that country again. Again, this is all under neocon, neoliberal foreign policy. I'll go even further. Why do we have such an antagonistic relationship with Iran? Why are we not friends with them? We used to be very cool with Iran back in the day, okay? Specifically, in the 1950s, led by the CIA, we led a coup in Iran where we overthrew a democratically elected leader, right? Remember, because we love democracy, okay? The United States loves democracy, okay? This is why we overthrow them, right? We overthrew a democratically elected leader in Iran and replaced him with an authoritarian leader. And that later led to the Islamic Revolution of the 1970s, in which that leader was driven out of the country, and you have an Islamic Republic that took its place. And ever since then, Iran and the United States have been enemies. And again, our foreign policy basically led to the situation that we're in right now with that country. And I can go on and on and on with this, okay? Because we've done this so many times, okay? We've armed rebels in Syria and other parts of the Middle East. Again, we don't have a good track record of U.S. foreign policy intervention in the Middle East. We don't. We suck at it. We're terrible at it, right? But again, this is the type of stuff that
we just can't stop.
Mike Pence pushes as if it's gospel. And then they criticize everybody else who are like, let's question this. We don't have a good history of doing this. People like Trump saying, the invasion of Iraq was a disaster, right? What happened in Iraq was a disaster. And then Trump had to come in and clean it up, right? He's the only guy that was able to actually clean up the Middle East. Y'all remember ISIS in Iraq? How Obama essentially botched the rebuilding of Iraq after Bush went in? You remember that? You remember that after we overthrew Saddam Hussein and you had, again, these terrorists that arose to power because, again, we had a power vacuum that was created by U.S. interventionism, overthrowing a dictator that we used to be cool with, by the way, right? When he played ball with us. But since he didn't want to play ball with us anymore, we had to topple him, right? That's just kind of how it goes. But anyways, okay, we created a power vacuum. Radical Islamists rose out of that power vacuum. And under the Obama administration, again, that was a huge thing. It was terrible. Trump comes along, calls it out for what it is, calls out the neocon establishment that supported this, and then he goes in and he cleans up ISIS. Okay? We don't hear too much about ISIS nowadays. Well, why is that? It's because of the Trump administration. But again, you got people like Mike Pence that can come out here with a straight face and lie to you and try to blame Trump, blame Vivek Ramaswamy, blame Ron DeSantis for policies
that he was part of,
that we know have failed from neocons. Okay,
was part of.
I'm so serious. These people, they kill me with this. They sit on their high horse and they've never seen a war that they didn't want to fight, even though they don't want to send their sons and daughters to go fight the wars. They don't want to go fight the wars themselves. They want to fight every war. They want to get involved in every conflict, and they screw it up every single time. And we never learn our lesson from it. Well, why is that? Because screwing up these conflicts is good for the United States. The military-industrial complex, that is. Don't believe me? Look at defense stocks, okay? Look at the top gainers in the S&P 500 today. Northrop Grumman up 9.87%. General Dynamics 7.25%. Lockheed Martin 6.38%. The defense contractors are winning, okay? Look at oil. Look at oil futures, okay? Up 4.16%. Why? Because war is on the horizon.
Yeah.
Again, these people benefit from war. And guess what? They turn around, okay, and they give donations to politicians, to neocons like Mike Pence, and then they go on TV and they call for more war. This is how the game works, guys. This is how the game works. The neoliberal, neocon establishment, they benefit from more war. They benefit from U.S. interventionism in every single conflict. Why? Because the defense contractors get paid, and the defense contractors turn around and make donations and give kickbacks to the politicians for doing that. Again, there's a lot of people that get rich from war, guys. So again, when you have somebody like Trump that comes around and bucks the neocon establishment, bucks the defense contractors, bucks the military-industrial complex, this is why they're going after him so hard. That's the real honest to God truth. They don't want Trump back in office because Trump maintained peace, or he tried his best to keep peace. And peace is not in the interest of these politicians. It's not in the interest of the powers that be. And that's why you see people like Mike Pence coming out here saying stupid shit like he's saying, and Nikki Haley as well too, because these people have never seen a war they didn't want to fight. And that's why they go out of their way to make sure that they cause more war. These people know funding and arming extremists is not a good idea, but they do it anyways. Because, hey, as long as war is happening in the Middle East and people are dying, these people are getting paid. They're getting campaign donations and they're maintaining power and control. It's a sad reality, but that is the reality. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.
Yeah, definitely go to his page and give him a like. I mean,
check out more of his stuff because he's really good from what I've seen.
Really good. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that I've
very well spoken, very well educated.
Well, he's got his finger on the pulse. And it's so refreshing because I've been that guy for years. And I'm not tooting my own horn because
It's just facts.
it is, it's just facts. I mean, I have been saying this till I have been blue in the face, that there is no party. It's one party, it's a uniparty. Democrats and Republicans are a uniparty. And until you take money out of the politicians' pockets, nothing will change.
Nope.
As long as corporations are allowed to make these millions of dollars of donations to these politicians, it'll never end. As long as these politicians are allowed to extort money from other countries while giving them tons of money to just launder back, none of this is going to change. People can say what they want about Trump. I don't care. But in the 4 years that he was president, I can count on one hand the amount of mistakes I found that he made. Outside of that, every policy, every decision that he was making was perhaps the best choice to be made.
Yeah.
That man had peace in the Middle East. He had Saudi Arabia and Israel talking peace.
Yep.
That's huge. He stepped foot in Korea, not with 18,000, and a lot of these Democrats are like, oh, well, he's in Putin's pocket. He said that he respects the way that Putin essentially runs the way he wants to do things. He doesn't agree with communism. No one really does except for Democrats.
Right. It's just hypocrisy. It's straight up hardcore hypocrisy.
Well, I mean, when you think of communism, you think, okay, well, they don't want anyone to go against them. So there's no fair election. Well, we've been going through that for a couple of years now, but decades, but for the last couple of years anyway. And what you do is you imprison your opponent. What are they doing now? They've got 91 indictments on Trump. There is not a thing that Joe Biden or his administration can do that the media will go in hard on and beat him up over.
Nope.
Trump could do nothing.
Nope.
Nothing. I'm going to give money to the right people, which in his case, he wanted to give money to, for example, the HBCUs, the historic black colleges. I'm absolutely against that. I think it's racist. I think it's ridiculous. But he wanted to try to amend peace with the black community. He was never even given credit for that.
I didn't even know that happened.
I wouldn't do that because I'm sick of us being separated by race. It's like as soon as you could ask a feminist or you can ask any of these extremists or any of these activists, what does it take to make you happy so that you can just go on along your merry way and we can all be happy together? They will not give you an answer.
Nope.
Because they have to continually move the goalposts. The same thing with pharmaceutical. If they really wanted to cure people, they would be out of people to spend money for the cures. That's why our healthcare system is broken. That's why everything we've got is broken, because people have figured out that as a consumer economy, and that is what we are in the United States, we are consumers. In order to keep us consuming,
the demand has to be high.
You have to have things that people will let go of. The new iPhone really is not that much better, if any, than the previous iPhone.
It looks exactly the same.
But they need you to purchase it to stay in business. So they have to keep pushing these things out, and then they give you updates that eventually make your phone so unusable that you have to go buy a new one because it's locking up on you or it's crashing. And I've gone through, I'm an Android guy, I've gone through Samsung, and I love my Samsung phone. But don't be mistaken, that thing will last me 3 or 4 years before it finally just gives up. Quit looking at these politicians as people to look up to.
Yeah.
Just stop.
They're not.
Just stop it. You're not a Democrat or a Republican. They're having a party. You ain't invited.
Yep.
They just want your vote.
Your number. We are simply just numbers to them.
They're going to pander to you. That's how it works. They're going to tell you that we're going to give you reparations. And we're going to give you free college, and we're going to give you free and some more free, and we're going to top it off with some even more free. And it never happens.
Nope.
It's always a promise that's never delivered, but people continue to fall for it. Everything has shifted from trying to create a country. We're no longer trying to be a country. We're trying at this point now with our world leaders and our leaders for our administration. They want it worldly. They're not satisfied with just this country, which is why the World Economic Forum exists, because they want control of the entire world. Open your eyes, guys. This has gotten out of hand, and it's all about fear, and it's all about division. They're going to find ways to divide us as a people, and then you're going to have these two Republican and Democrat establishments are going to jump on one side or the other, and they're going to be opposed to the other, which is absolutely disappointing. People like Dan Crenshaw, who I had high hopes for early on, has just become one of the purchased and sold politicians of many that we have.
And it's really sad because he was real hopeful.
Yeah, I mean, and then you've got people like Matt Gaetz who's bucking the system, bucking everything. And people they want to trash him, but you know what? Kudos to him for standing up to the establishment and saying, look, we've done the same thing over and over and over and over and over. It hasn't done any good. We need to change things. Donald Trump was president. We had 0 wars. Since the Biden administration has taken over, we have 4 wars currently. 3 you're aware of, and a 4th you're aware of, but don't consider it that. And I personally do. The first one is Ukraine and Russia. They're 2 communist countries that are basically extorting one another. And
should not have our noses in this war at all. They're not allies. They're both, we have nothing to do with them, either of them.
Well, we do because we make it our business.
But we don't because it's not our business.
But we make it our business. And a lot of the things that we did do with the Mujahideen and ISIS and these terrorists that we helped create, we did it to stop Russia back in the day. But if you're Russia, do you forgive that? It's ridiculous to think that we're ever going to be allied with Russia. It's never going to happen. And the Ukraine are absolutely just as bad. They're communists as well. They're Nazis. For a country that calls President Trump a Nazi as much as they do, they sure love to fund actual Nazis. And if you go to the Ukraine, you will find a mini of a Nazi there. Now you have the war that we're all very familiar with, which is one that just occurred again, which is between the Palestinians and the Israelis.
Sad.
The reality is Israel is a Christian nation, and they're also westernized. And the Middle East does not like that. They are all about Sharia law. They're all about the Quran, which, I mean, again, passing no judgment. I know that can be a peaceful religion, but it's all out of context based on what these extremists have done with that religion. Like many, like Christianity. There's people that are extremists with that that take it way over the top of what it really should be, which is just a guide to be a better person. You can do that with any religion, and that's what they've done with these radical Islamists that we help cultivate. So you have that war now. One that we really shouldn't be involved in, and frankly, if we told Israel, you know what, we're out, do whatever you got to do, Palestine would be a parking lot. Because the Air Force for the Israelis and their military is far superior than anything else in the Middle East.
See,
anything else.
That's where I disagree, though. They are one of our closer allies.
And that's fine. I mean, we've armed them to the teeth and we've trained them as well as we can. They can handle themselves. Take the kid gloves off.
But they have
Let them do what they want.
I mean, not even that, but they have our people there that are dying on top of war crimes stacked on war crimes stacked on war crimes. Now we're doing something, but why wouldn't we do it?
Not our country. We have our own problem. We need to let Israel handle theirs because they can. They're capable. And anyone that is in Israel that is an American citizen, get the hell out of there. They can book a flight. They can do what they got to do. They can get the hell out of there. Not our job to come pick you back up. You went there. You can get back.
Okay, so what about the 12 Americans that died during all this?
Unfortunate. What about the thousands that died in the Twin Towers? These are things that you can't control after the fact. You can control the fact of what is happening right now. If you're an American and you're in Israel, it's very possible for an American citizen to jump a plane and get the hell out of there. They did before it all broke loose, and I'm not sure how easy it is now, but I'm sure it's still possible to get them out of there. I'm not concerned about that. Let Israel do their thing. I think they can protect, they're one of the most protected countries in this world. I mean, the Iron Dome, good luck getting your missiles in there because if they're prepared for them, it's going to be rough.
I did hear that we're supposed to be sending them more ammunition for that.
We're pitting people against each other and weaponizing both. We need to stop doing that. That's what Ron Paul's point was. We need to stop weaponizing all these other countries for our own profit. Go look up the Iran-Contra issues. I mean, you'll learn way more about how this all works just by learning more about how that went. And it's insanity that we keep doing this, but that's our second war. Third war. We've got China basically saying Taiwan is not a sovereign state, it's not a country. They believe that they should be able to absorb it. And it's getting closer and closer every day to that occurring. And the weaker we seem, and the more that our military is stretched between the Ukraine and between Israel, China can do what it wants. So be ready and be prepared for more on that front, which would be a third war. The fourth war is the invasion we have at our southern border.
Yeah.
We're looking at millions have crossed the border now. Biden administration has done absolutely nothing except condone it. They've
open up portions of the southern border.
Yeah, they basically gave an invite, and these aren't invalid women with children that are coming in.
These are men.
These are what I call sleeper cells. So these Hamas that are now attacking Israel, that we're watching them behead people in the streets and rape grandmothers and just do some of the most awful things you can possibly imagine. There are a lot of them in our country right now. And if they all get to the point where they can all group up together, they're going to plan something like another 9/11. Do not think that some of these big cities will not get targeted by these terrorists. Don't be stupid. If I had to guess, if I was a betting man based on what I've learned throughout history, I would bet that right before the 2024 election, something big will go down. Hemorrhaging the way we are at our southern border right now, it could be anything, guys.
Yeah.
So keep your head on a swivel. Get in the comments, let us know your thoughts on all of this rant. You're going to find some of the stuff I said wrong, and I'm sure you're going to want to debate, but that's fine.
That's when you get in our Discord.
You can do that as well. We do have these discussions in Discord.
We do.
Like, share,
subscribe,
do the thing.
Do the thing.
Until the next time, guys, as always, come at me, bro.
The Brodown is over. Let's bro out!